Australians all let us rejoice, for we are young and free, with golden soil and wealth at all. Our home is girt by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts, our beauty rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
Now we're going to get our lovely porters to sing the PNG National Anthem for us, please. Listen to this, guys.
Arise from the stars of His land. Let us sing of our joys to be free, praising God and rejoicing to be Papua New Guinea. South again from the north to sea, Papua New Guinea. Let us raise our voices and proclaim Papua New Guinea. Now we thanks to the good Lord above, for His kindness, His wisdom and love, for His land of our fathers so free, Papua New Guinea. South again from the whole world to hear, Papua New Guinea. We are independent, we are free, Papua New Guinea.
Thanks, boys. Okay, I'm just going to read out a speech given by Lieutenant Colonel Phil Roden. Lieutenant Colonel Phil Roden took over the 2nd 14th Battalion after the CO of the battalion, Lieutenant Colonel Keys, was captured by the Japanese on around about the 30th of August, 31st of August, 1942. So this speech was delivered on the 26th of August, 1998. We have come here today as pilgrims to be reunited once again in spirit with our fallen comrades of 80 years. That is the essential ingredient of a pilgrimage, the journey into a sacred place as an act of spiritual devotion. For the true, the noble and the brave do die in battle, but their spirits dwell forevermore in their habitations and the men they have served and loved. Here in this lovely village of Isurava, all is now quiet. But 80 years ago, on the 26th of August 1942, the 2nd 14th Battalion relieved the gallant 39th Battalion to take on the Japanese, who up until then had unrestrainedly pursued its conquest of Southeast Asia since that infamous day at Pearl Harbor on the 7th of December 1941. The next 4 days at Isurava are best described by Bill Russell in his history of the 2nd 14th Battalion. He wrote, "Mortar bombs and mountain gun shells burst in the treetops, showering the troops with shrapnel, which crashed through to burst on the ground, where the noise was redoubled by the confined space of the jungle. Heavy machine guns cut their own lanes of fire as they chopped easily through the small trees and ricocheted off large trees. Easily concealed snipers fired on our own men as they desperately tried to scratch out shallow body holes with tin hats and bayonets. What the Japs had not reckoned with, as they swarmed up between the creek and the track, was the reaction. They got. In attack after attack, they stormed out of the jungle to reel back before steady fire of all violent steel. Those who survived the firing of rifle and Bren were met with Tommy guns and grenade, and those that came through were met with bayonet. The Australian newspaper in 1994 published a series of anniversary essays edited by Dr. David Horner, entitled Battles That Shaped Australia. One of those essays covered the Kokoda track battle. The essayist, James Morrison, wrote, on 30th of August, General Horry, frustrated at the delay to his advance, threw his large reserves into the attack. The Australians began their fiercely fought withdrawal from Isurava to Isurava. The Australians had held Isurava for 4 days. They strained Lieutenant General Horry's supply lines, and they made up his advance to Port Moresby. And they held up his advance to Port Moresby. This was the culminating point of the campaign. The advantage then passed from the Japanese to the Australians. From the 31st of August to the 15th of September, the Australians fought against vastly superior numbers. In his book, Those Ragged Bloody Heroes, author Peter Braun described a decisive game of cat and mouse along the track. Company by company, platoon by platoon, section by section, they defended until their comrades passed through their lines, broke off contact, sometimes only 20 or 30 metres from the enemy, and repeated the procedure again and again down the track. To withdraw too early was to allow the enemy too speedy an acquisition of ground. To withdraw too late meant outflanking, encirclement and annihilation. What enabled the 2nd 14th and the 2nd 16th battalions to turn defeat into victory? Outnumbered, probably 6 to 1, and certainly outgunned, the battalions strained their undoubled professionalism and experienced capability to the limit. But there was something else, something that was almost intangible. Firstly, I believe it was the inner dependence of the units, one upon the other. Secondly, it was the ability to hold on after all hope is dead, continuing to fight on until there was scant breath left in the body. Lastly, it was the respect they had for each other. Only a well-trained and happy unit can survive in its hour of need. Nor should we discount Australia's hour of peril. The troops did not. They were fully aware of Australia's dependence on them. Complete failure would have meant the Japs at Port Moresby and then Australia itself. Perhaps paraphrasing the words of Stephen Spencer's poem is apt. The 2nd 14th are men who in their lives fought for life and left the vivid air signed with their honour. Now is the time for sober thoughts. The time for remembrance with gratitude for Wuzzy Angels, those sincere, tender and humane people who did so much for our wounded.
What if I just get in there, if I just sit here? Just try and get some footage, thanks man. Yeah.
For many of our diggers, the Wuzzy Angels, as they were affectionately known, are an enduring memory of the Kokoda campaign. Thousands of Papua New Guinea natives were employed as labourers to carry the supplies needed to fight the war. They hauled the supplies forward, and their backload would be our badly wounded soldiers. It was here they earned their reputation as the Wuzzy Angels. In the rugged terrain of the Owen Stanleys, it took a team of 8 men for each stretcher, and their strength, endurance, sure-footedness and devotion to their wounded charges was legendary. Many a family in Australia owes the very lives of their loved ones to these men, the Wuzzy Angels. Many a mother in Australia, when the busy day is done, sends a prayer to the Almighty for the keeping of her son, asking that an angel guide him and bring him safely back. Now we see those prayers are answered on the Owen Stanley track. Though they haven't any halos, only holes slashed in the ears, and with faces worked with tattoos, with scratch pins in their hair, bringing back the wounded just as steady as a hearse, using leaves to keep the rain off, and as gentle as a nurse. Slow and careful in bad places on the awful mountain track, and the look upon their faces makes us think that Christ was black. Not a move to hurt the carried, as they treat him like a saint. It's a picture worth recording that an artist's yet to paint. Many a lad will see his mother, and the husbands, widows and wives, just because the Wuzzy carried them out to save their lives, from mortar or machine gun fire or chance surprise attack, to safety and the care of doctors at the bottom of the track. May the mothers in Australia, when they offer up a prayer, mention these impromptu angels with the Wuzzy hair. The Battle of Isurava was fought between the 26th and the 30th of August 1942. It has been described as the turning point of the battle for the Kokoda Trail. For those 4 days, a force of less than 1,000 Australians fought a desperate battle against General Horry's army of some 6,000 men, armed with heavy machine guns, mortars and artillery that far outranged the Australians. In often hand-to-hand fighting, they fought for their very lives, holding their vastly superior foe for 4 vital days, inflicting horrific casualties upon him. The Australians were the men of Maroubra Force, the 39th Battalion Militia, and the 2nd 14th Battalion Australian Imperial Force, the AIF. Together, they fought side by side in this epic battle, winning for themselves a place in history as the first to blunt the Japanese attack in the Pacific War. The 39th was a Victorian militia battalion, a mixture of volunteers and conscripts, tasked with the defence of the Australian homeland. Many of them were only 18 years old, with a sprinkling of older men, some of whom were veterans of World War I. With less than 3 months' training, they were rushed to New Guinea to meet the Japanese threat to our shores. There's a place they call Isurava, a place of mist and rain, where a bunch of Aussie diggers won honour and great fame. In that stinking, steamy jungle where death stalked every man, they fought a bloody battle with the Empire of Japan. They had the name of Chocos, those boys all dressed in green, but they bore the name Australia, those kids so young and keen. Mud over blood their colour patch, those boys of just 18. They gave their lives that we may live, those boys in jungle green. The AIF, it christened them as they passed them on the trail, those ragged, bloody heroes of the Owen Stanley Trail. They fought with such great courage that when you see them passing by, your heart fills with emotion and a tear comes to your eye for those ragged, bloody heroes of the gallant 39. The bonds of mateship forged in the crucible of war are possibly stronger than any other experienced by man. The shared adversity, the reliance on one another, and the tragedy they endure builds a mateship that survives the years, unbroken. I've travelled down some lonely roads, both crooked tracks and straight, and I've learned life's noblest creed, summed up in one word: mate. I'm thinking back across the years, a thing I do of late, and these words stick between me ears. You've got to have a mate. Someone who'll take you as you are, regardless of your state, and stand as firm as Ayers Rock, because he is your mate. Me mind goes back to 43, to slavery and hate, when man's one chance to stay alive depended on his mate. With bamboo for a billy can and bamboo for a plate, a bamboo paradise for bugs was bed for me and mate. You'd slip and slither through the mud and curse your rotten fate, but then you'd hear a quiet word: don't drop your bundle, mate. And though it's all so long ago, this truth I have to state: a man don't know what lonely means till he has lost his mate. If there's a life that follows this, if there's a golden gate, the welcome that I want to hear is just, good on you, mate. And so to all who ask us why we keep these special dates like Anzac Day, I answer why. We're thinking of our mates. And when I've left the driver's seat and handed in me plates, I'll tell old Peter at the door, I've come to join me mates.
Private Albert Joseph Johnny, DX 37986, second 14, Alpha Company. Thankfully, his grave in Banana is not one of the many marked as an unknown soldier. However, his story does not appear among the many tales of the brave like Potts, Kingsbury and Templeton that have been committed to the Australian Legion. Great Uncle Albert to me, to my nana, he was her brother Albie who never came home. His courage, endurance, mateship and sacrifice was known to her. It is known to me. And thanks to Major Scott Babington, it is now known to all of you. They went with songs to the battle. They were young, straight of limb, true of eye, steady aglow. They were staunch to the end, against odds uncounted. They fell with their faces to the foe. They shall not grow old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them, lest we forget.